Hi everyone, welcome to another Data Vault Innovators Community Meetup. Today we're going to have a conversation about the Worldwide Data Vault Consortium that was on a couple of weeks ago. And we're going to talk about some of the impressions of the event, some things that were seen and learned. And to help me with that, I've got two special guests, Bronwen Fairbairn and Nols Ebersohn, both consultants at Certus Insight. So let's jump into some intros. Bronwen, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Thanks, Jules. Hi, my name's Bronwen Fairbairn. I've been working in the Data Vault space and been a Data Vault evangelist for about 15 years now. I actually took over as the Data Vault architect from Nols. It was possibly the first Data Vault implementation in Australia, and I've never looked back. So I'm now working with Certus Solutions as a consultant for their information and insights team, trying to get exposure to as many Data Vault implementations I can and help them on that journey. And really focusing on trying to get from that data to analytics level, which I really think we need good quality data so we can build good quality analytics and make our businesses work better.
Great. And Nols, you don't really need a lot of introduction, but a quick snapshot would be good.
Hi everyone, thank you Jules. Nols Ebersohn, Principal Architect at Certus Solutions, also an authorized trainer in Data Vault 2 through Dan Lindstedt. And so yes, we've had the opportunity to attend the Worldwide Data Vault Consortium. Once again, a fantastic event, lots of lessons learned. And so hope to share some of the insights that we have around the traps.
That's great. So before we jump into talking about the event, just a quick note, obviously, on the actual Data Vault Innovators community itself. The community is really here as a technical and professional development community to help support and grow individuals who are interested in Data Vault, to create a place for conversations and debate, and information around training or case studies or business cases, or supporting the community with whatever information they need. And it's really based on community principles. So the more interaction we get with community members, the more tailored and the more information we can provide that meets the needs. So if you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear about what sort of content you would actually like to see coming up. Obviously, if you're watching this through YouTube, then like and subscribe so that you get notifications for the upcoming content that's coming, and there's a lot coming soon. So please remember that. There's also a lot of new features that you'll see on the Data Vault Innovators community site coming up fairly shortly. So keep an eye on that. But let's jump into today's discussion. So guys, I guess let's start with just some initial impressions of the event. Would be great. So Bronwen, do you want to give us your first cut?
Cool. All right. Well, it was a great event. It hasn't happened last year because of COVID, and so it was getting everyone back together. They had people on site and remote. So it was just great to get the community back together. Hopefully we'll get to do it more often. One of the things that really impressed me is how many long-term Data Vault evangelists there were there. There was an invested community of long-timers wanting to share their experiences, really proud of what they've done, but wanting to share stories and see what they could do better and share ideas on how the Data Vault could be improved. I personally made some really useful connections. The thing that I think was a little bit funny is the fact that my most useful connection of the conference was probably with someone who was also based in Brisbane. So probably need to go out and network within my local community a bit more. One of the other things I really thought was doing Data Vault isn't simple. It depends became a bit of a catchphrase of the conference. You can't just go and get a cheat sheet and put up a Data Vault instance in a day. So the conference presentations were really important to share ideas and share experiences and get learning from all of the work that everybody was doing, and hopefully do our own implementations better and faster because of all of this shared experience.
And so, yeah, Nols, this was I guess for those that maybe don't know, the Worldwide Data Vault Consortium is the conference that's run by DVA. I think last year it was a virtual one, wasn't it? And this is the first year back in person at Stowe in Vermont. And you've been several times physically, but obviously this time virtually.
Yes. So what's fantastic about the event in Stowe is it is such a beautiful place to go. First and foremost, it's beginning of spring usually when the conference is on, so everything is in bloom and beautiful. So it's quite the venue. The thing that is even more special is, as Bronwen has pointed out, the sense of community. It's like a family reunion to some degree, and that you see all of the luminaries that are associated with the Data Vault and the industry at large, and they're readily accessible, and you can have a sensible chat, which is fantastic. It's one of those really special traits of a conference, and it allows you to do so, which is invaluable to those that are both practiced and new to Data Vault. So in previous years, there were, for instance, some graduates that presented of the work they have done, and the support and the connections they were able to make at the conference were spectacular. So they were very well received, very well supported in all of the questions they've had, the elements that they thought were relevant, and some sage advice from some more experienced attendees were also passed on, which is always valuable. So yes, the conference holds a lot of value, and it's a unique experience, which all just adds to the sense of community.
It's a good point you make there that they had graduates there, so it's not just all for Data Vault experts. It's for those that they're on the journey learning about Data Vault, and as a professional development tool for those that are interested. It's maybe it's part of their career development. So we'd certainly encourage those who are embarking on the Data Vault journey to attend, or you can actually go online and purchase an attendee, virtual attendee, and view some of the content that was produced. I know that Dan makes that available. So anything we talk about today, you can actually still access, and you do that through the DVA website. So let's talk about what were the big themes that you heard at the event. I mean, I can think there's definitely would have been discussions about data mesh, but what were some of the big themes from it?
The biggest themes for me were really data mesh, as you mentioned, but also how to build your Data Vault and how to make sure that you're communicating with the business and getting your business engaged and learning from the business users prior to just building the Data Vault. One of the other things was really focusing on technical debt. So how you could make sure that your Data Vault was well maintained, housekeeping on the Data Vault, the fact that it's not just build it and it's done. It is a data asset. You do need to make sure that you're constantly reevaluating things, constantly making sure that you're leveraging the best designs, and constantly making sure that you've delivered any information assets that your data science community might want or might need.
Yeah, I think the agile aspects isn't just about delivering fast, but actually bringing the business into it, isn't it? And making sure that you're building what they need rather than what they may have said they wanted months ago. So, Nols, any other themes that you picked up on?
There were quite a few themes around security and access, with obviously legislation like GDPR and other elements coming into play. So that was also a distinct theme. There was also a theme around leveraging and harvesting your business requirements in a more systematic manner without necessarily having to be obtrusive to the business. The theme that come through is you have to talk to your business. These are absolutely critical elements. So that again comes through. But as we've always had these good learnings from Data Vault is you have to engage with the business, and that engagement obviously requires some conversations. So it was also interesting to see how the industry has evolved as far as the number and also the maturity of the tools that are appearing in the space, in the Data Vault space. So that was all very clear, all supporting that analytical endpoint for all of the organization. So a lot of the, as Bronwen has put it, success factors were presented as well.
Yeah, I know a partner of ours, Infovia, attended and presented their security product or framework, which is actually becoming part of Iris, which is exciting. And they've just applied for a patent on their technology, I understand. Did you have a look at that, Nols?
Indeed. And so this is a very good approach to, irrespective of your technology stack or the current implementations that are in place, it can both be overlaid on top of that, or it could be added as from the start, be it as may gives you nice fine-grained policy-based, role-based security patterns with exception management and so on, with a very, very light overhead to the overall approach. So this was, again, one of those key elements that attracted a lot of interest at the conference, in that it's clearly something that the industry is grappling with to successfully deploy.
Yeah, that's exciting. Now, I know there was an announcement, Bronwen, about something, I guess it's an innovation within Data Vault, and it's called Advanced Virtual Data Vault. What is that? What does it mean? Where are we at with that particular journey?
Okay, well, as you may have heard, the Advanced Virtual Data Vault extension, it's a bit of a name to get your head around, is in development. So I'm hesitant to say anything that'll end up being wrong when Dan joins up all of the dots. But it's about adding data that is too big to physically copy into the Data Vault architecture. So data that's probably already in the cloud, you can access it using the hubs and link structures that you've got in your Data Vault, but you don't necessarily copy it from elsewhere into your own cloud repository, because that would just be unnecessary and unwieldy. So it's leveraging that data, even though it's housed externally, but it's in the cloud, so you can access it easily. But you still get the Data Vault advantages of the governance and that integrated data asset, which I think is key to self-service and key to utilizing that data. So I'd really just like to say, watch this space and remember the name, because you will be seeing it again, but that name is a little bit hard to get your head around. A few presentations at the conference were going, I can't quite remember it. What is it? So I've got a couple of little tips people might want to use to get that name in their head. So I said it's like AC/DC, which is the biggest rock band of history. So we've just kind of gotten rid of the C's and replaced it with these, and it's AVDV. Or you can think about it as actualized vault, direct vault. So it's using your physical Data Vault, but also using components of the Data Vault that might be housed elsewhere.
Yeah, I like AVDV. That's good. So, Nols, is that using virtualization technologies? Does it need virtualization technologies, or is it? How does that fit? I don't understand.
So it's an extension of the Data Vault approach, where, as Bronwen pointed out, you have multiple hundreds of trillions of rows, and you do not have the ability or capacity to lift, shift, and restructure those elements. And so it's not really a virtualization technology conversation, but it's more a technique conversation, where some of the existing elements that we have in the Data Vault, like bits and bridges, play a more pivotal role to access in place without losing the performance sparkle that would otherwise be expected from the Data Vault platform. So technically, the standards and the elements around it is still being worked on. So all of this is experimental. All of this is in development. This is an area that will be enhanced over time. So watch this space, as Bronwen's pointed out so nicely, but it is experimental. And this is what is really interesting about Dan, in that he keeps on challenging the existing data vault specification. At minimum, on a yearly basis, Dan would go, is it still relevant? Is it still working? What is the holdbacks? Where's the industry going? And this conversation has been coming over the last good number of years, where this has been discussed. What if my data is too big to move? What's my options? And particularly for things such as audio, video, and pictures, which are massive in size, lots of volume, but the actual requirements around it becomes more business driven. So what is a true delta is another conversation as part of this broader requirements or specification or standards discussions that has come around as to what is meant by a true delta, because there's a technical delta, but there's also a business delta. What in the picture has changed? So these are the kind of questions that are being posed to the data vaults standards. This is what is being considered for where the future goes. This is an extension of the existing paradigm, so it's not Data Vault 3, so don't worry, it's not going to change that element as such, but it certainly is considering the practical challenges for a truly large set of data that needs to be considered. So again, Data Vault's always been well positioned to continue to scale. And this is basically looking at, what if my hardware can't scale? What if my data is that big that my hardware can't cope? How do we go about that? And so size has always been relative to the capacity or capability of the infrastructure we have available, and we're getting data rapidly outgrowing infrastructure. So where does that leave us in Data Vault world? So that was a fascinating conversation to have.
Wow, that's really cool that, you know, the standards continue to grow and evolve, and Dan keeps innovating on top of, you know, the core Data Vault. So it's exciting to hear that that's happening. It'll be even better to see, I guess, what comes out of that. And obviously, if you're watching this and you want to know more, then, you know, I'm sure Nols and Bronwen would be happy to have a chat at some point. But yeah, we'll definitely watch this space. Okay, so that's kind of, I guess, one of the big things that was mentioned at the event. But getting back to kind of the more practical side, Bronwen, what did you learn about just building a data vault? You know, what tips did you pick up, or was it just things you already knew? Was there something new you discovered?
A lot of it was things that were already part of the data vault standards. So people just reiterating and reminding people how critical these things are. But the overriding guideline seemed to be that it's so important to talk to the business. And it was really quite useful. A couple of the presentations, so Bruce McCartney and Richard Strange. Yes, we had a Dr. Strange talking at the conference. It was quite exciting. Had some great ideas on how to talk to the business and how to actually harvest and use the data from your communication with the business to actually help develop your data vault, and use that data mine those communications as well, which was really important in trying to get kind of natural language processing of all your business discussions to try and identify what your business keys are, what your semantic and organizational ontology should be, which I think was a really great idea and a great technique. Another thought was to focus on your objectives. So a lot of people think about how we're gonna focus on the data vault as a technical product. We're going to get all of this data into the data vault, and then we're kind of going to be a bit waterfall. We're going to do the next step, and then we're going to do the next step, and then we'll do the reporting at the end. A lot of people were talking about you really need to focus on that objective, and you can actually do something like build a permanent landing area. So actually get that data backed up temporarily outside of the data vault in your staging area. And then you can know you've got that history, but you can bring it into the data vault and actually leverage that business key relationship and actually leverage that data when you've got a use case for it, because that use case for it is so important. When you think about it, it tells you how to model the data. If you haven't got a use case, it's very hard to get the model correct. So building that persistent landing zone, and then maybe starting to prototype your reports and then connect all the dots together and build the correct Data Vault implementation in more of an agile way. One other thing that was discussed is the consensus that it's probably worth getting a Data Vault acceleration tool up front. And this is a really important thing to discuss, I think. Someone, I think it was Mary Menk, suggested that we shouldn't use the term Data Vault automation tool because the Data Vault can't ever be automated. There's too much in it that is an art, that needs the business involvement, that needs quality engineers involved in how it's built. But you can definitely have a Data Vault acceleration tool that makes your development easier. And it's interesting to think that some of the suggestions that were made were that the first project isn't necessarily going to be faster when you take into account the cost of a Data Vault acceleration tool versus building it yourself. Maybe from a cost benefit analysis, building your Data Vault tool internally is going to be the same as purchasing externally, because you've got that licensing cost, the development's faster, but you've also got that licensing cost. But what was really the benefit, she thought, was the long-term risk. The fact that if you have something like a security requirement, GDPR requirements coming up, a Data Vault acceleration tool is more likely to have that functionality built in because it's already servicing other customers that have that use case. And therefore, when new requirements pop up, you don't have to go and re-engineer your in-house acceleration tool and do all that regression testing. You can just utilize what's already there and what's already tested from a certified Data Vault tool. There were some few other things. And one other thing I would say in relation to that Data Vault acceleration tool concept, however, is that Data Vault understanding is key. Your team members shouldn't get taught on the tool before they get the Data Vault understanding, because the Data Vault is the data asset that you're creating. Theoretically, tools can change. You could replace one tool with another, but the Data Vault is the asset that you're going to retain. So you need to make sure that it's correct, and your team needs to understand the Data Vault techniques and the Data Vault standards before they understand the specifics of a particular Data Vault automation tool.
Yeah, we would definitely agree with that sentiment around training and mentoring as well, Nols. That's one of the things we do quite often is get people trained up, but then spend a fair bit of time mentoring them. So, and that leads to, I guess, a discussion. And I know there was lots of talk around ROI at the event as well. And acceleration or automation, whichever term we use, and training are both there really to help you maximize your ROI. Is there anything else, Nols, that you can think of in that maximizing your ROI space that we should mention?
The elements that I was very happy to see that industry leaders like Scott Ambler, for instance, talking about technical debt, which we've been talking about here in the Data Vault context for years now, is starting to get some mainstream airtime as well. Talking about the issues you face with the fact that you have a lot of business rules. And so Data Vault is obviously uniquely positioned in that it has very specific places in the architecture where these are applied, and therefore gives you flexibility in execution. So that's probably one of the other elements that I thought that beyond some of the other discussions around mesh and fabric and all those type of things, was very interesting to observe how the change in conversation is happening in the marketplace.
Now, you mentioned mesh and fabric, and we will actually have an upcoming Data Dialogues episode on the platform with James Hartwright, where we're going to do a deeper dive into what is data mesh. Obviously with the book released recently, but I know there's been lots of discussion. So for you guys, can I get from both of you, Bronwen, you first, just your view of how does Fabric, Mesh, and Data Vault all sort of fit together? Are they complementary, or are they antagonistic, I guess?
Cool. Well, this was, as Nols has said, something that was very discussed at the conference. There were quite a few presentations on what data mesh, data vault, and data fabric could mean together. The one I liked the most presented the fact that data mesh is really all about presentation. It's about presenting a consistent interface to your data that's nice and heterogeneous, and kind of a layer that sits on top of your actual data asset. Data Vault is all about building that auditable asset. It's about maintaining the history. It's about making sure that you can go to it at any point in time, and you've got that full visibility of what's changed, and you can actually track changes and do that behavioral analysis as well. And then Data Fabric is all about a consistent set of tools for processing and analyzing your data. So the three tools are actually quite distinctive, and they don't necessarily overlap a great degree, but that actually means that they're very complementary. They're great to be used together to actually get as much as you can out of your data. So data mesh and the data vault, for instance, data vault can be a little bit of a complex system for some users to access. We've had all these discussions about data self-service, and the real conclusion has been, well, you can't just have complete data self-service. It really needs to be managed self-service. And the data mesh can be a way to manage that. It can be a way to give people an interface into the data vault asset, but still control them to some degree, monitor what they're doing, make sure that if they've developed something that looks like it's useful, you actually bring that into the data vault and maintain it as an auditable data asset long term. You don't have this silo going off and doing its own thing and providing its own reporting that nobody else can audit and look at. And the same for Data Fabric. It's really a set of tools that can be useful in building your business rules and building your analysis and doing all that. So they really work brilliantly well together. And I recommend that companies do look into using all of them. You don't have to implement them at day one, but they are definitely complementary things. And if you're looking into one, you should probably think about, hey, does Data Fabric and Data Mesh have value to us as well? What do we think our evolution along there will be?
Yeah, it feels like it's a bit more than just the new marketing buzzwords. That there's actually some real substance behind these ideas. Nols, did you have any more to add to Bronwen's comments?
Yeah, and to that substance, there's actually a very nice dovetailing between Mesh and Data Vault, particularly on the methodology side of things, in that the Mesh is all about producing a product. And so having specific domains and owners and products being available, and so becoming results-driven, product-driven, the business requirements are front of mind. It is a different way to look at things, and the use of APIs and resolving technical debt, those type of elements are in Mesh a very important part of the overall approach to things. So from a standpoint, you still need an auditable, reliable, reconcilable source of information integrated across your business keys to allow your regulatory reporting and all those type of things to still operate very, very well. So the insights that are generated through these dynamic product-driven approaches still needs to be somewhere, and that's where Data Vault obviously helps with the integration and the consolidation across all of those. So they are 100% complementary to each other. And there are quite a few substantive use cases being talked about at the conference as to how and where, particularly the challenges around governance and around the integration of these products were quite nicely put out, and the both cultural and technical challenges that came along with those types of approaches.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll be doing a lot more on data mesh over the next few months, I guess. I know that Kent Graziano wrote a really interesting blog that I read on the Data Rebels website. So we're going to have a link in the DVIC on the DVIC page soon to that particular blog. But in the meantime, if you want to search it on Data Rebels site, Cindy's got it up there. So that's Kent's perspective, I guess, on this. And I think, you know, all the luminaries within the Data Vault world are obviously taking a strong look at this at the moment and understanding where all that overlap is. And as I said, James is going to do a bit more of a deep dive for us in a Data Dialogues episode that's coming up the next couple of weeks. So that's really cool. What about new tools? Who saw something that was exciting? Bronwen?
Well, I actually missed the info via hands-on session. I think Nols got to attend that, so I'll let him give you more information on that. But I got a lot of feedback from the rest of the attendees about how excited people were to see that and have that managed security. Yes, why does your security layer, why can't it leverage the same metadata and templates that everything else does? So a lot of people are very excited about that. One of the things that I thought was most exciting, which isn't necessarily Data Vault specific, but it's all the diagramming tools that were presented at the conference and different ways to represent information, not just metadata, but also ways to represent your data so that business users could understand the organizational data asset and work with that. So Richard Strange, for instance, did a whole lot of diagrams in a tool called YED Live, which is just an online diagramming tool, but he had really cool ways of presenting business information in that and allowing users to see what was going on within the business and give more feedback, and also knowledge graphs and how they could be used to more easily for users to understand things like same as and hierarchical links, actually representing that data at a graphical level, and helping the business come on the Data Vault journey and understand the information asset they've got.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't seen that one, so I'm going to go dig that out and have a look. And Nols, anything that you saw? Let's touch on the InfoVia stuff again, because I'm pretty excited about that.
So InfoVia have a product called InfoSecure, which they have that essentially grew up in the education and medical world, where specific cell-based security elements are required, besides broader-based security. And this needs to be, well, it was actually born at volume, at scale, at Micron, the memory manufacturers back in the day, to prevent industrial espionage and all sorts of different things like that to occur. So this has been born out of both necessity, but it has also been tested at absolute hundreds of billions of rows in the Data Vault deployments. The beauty is it's not just bespoke to Data Vault. You can apply it to any other design approach as well. And so they've now patented, pending on the approach and the technology. So that is really exciting. So, and it's typically of no heavier or lighter performance impact to the overall deployments that the organizations may have for applying, for instance, a database specific security. And so this becomes really interesting and really significant, because the interface to govern and to manage those elements, they've revamped and published a new version of that. And so it's making the task even simpler. So that's been the real the real push forward from a security perspective. The thing about the technology landscape and the vendor landscape in the data vault space is, back in the day, we only had, say, 2 or 3 vendors that were kind of interested in it, whereas we now have a large system of vendors that are heavily invested in making sure that they bring a quality data vault product to market, particularly in light of last year's announcement of the vendor certification program. And so you can expect to see that your vendors in due time would then start to be able to provide their credentials to the marketplace to validate the platform. So these are all of the elements that are maturing and rapidly expanding, and the ability and the polish that is coming with the products as they've now been developing for a number of years is evident in all of the presentations that has been at the conference. So that was quite pleasing, in that none of the vendors have rested on their laurels. They're all going hammer and tongs. Excuse the forging reference there, but they're going hammer and tongs, getting the necessary product out there to facilitate a good data vault outcome.
Yeah, it speaks volumes of the interest in data vault across a range of organisations and different industries. You know, that many vendors are interested in creating offerings, and I'm really excited, obviously, about the InfoVia one, because you know we've obviously incorporated that now as part of the Iris platform, as a standard part of the platform. So that's really exciting, and they're a great bunch of guys. So I guess let's kind of wrap this up. We've been going for a while. Any final thoughts that you'd like to share, Bronwen? Do you want to go first?
Cool. I just wanted to reiterate the community and the importance of the community, and the fact the community is growing, but it does have these long-term evangelists who have stayed with it. So I just think Data Vault is growing in general. One thing I would say is that the new tools are being established, and for anybody that wants to develop a data vault, I think it's important to be part of the community and make sure that your voice and your requirements are being heard by these tools, because they are interested in delivering what their users want, and you're more likely to have something that's built if you actually participate and have a voice and go out there and tell other data vault users, yes, this is, do you like this idea? I've got this idea. I think this is important, etc., and share those ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. Nols, any thoughts from you?
If you can get to go to the Worldwide Data Vault Consortium, it's not just a bunch of fun, it's also a fantastic place to meet and greet some of the thought leaders in the industry. It's also a place where you can make some really valuable connections and learn a lot. So it's very well worth the while to attend, if it's not in physical terms, and it's very much worth the while to attend virtually as well. Not as intimate as being able to ask the presenter a question straight up and have a conversation straight up after that, if you still have further lingering questions, but certainly very much worth the while to attend if you can.
Yeah, and I think the development of the community, you both mentioned, that is really important. One of the things we're going to be doing very soon to help with that is actually enable forums on the DVIC site. So that will hopefully allow people to communicate a little bit more easily with with questions or opportunities. So so that'll be exciting. So keep an eye out for that when the forums are enabled. We'll obviously let everyone know. Now, coming up, we actually are going to be having your presentations that you both did from the event. Nols, maybe you could just quickly give us a quick snapshot of the presentation you gave at the event, without giving away the farm, because we'll be that'll be coming up on the platform shortly.
Sure. So the myth and mythology of Data Vault is concepts that have been touted in the marketplace, talked about. And so we're just going through the list of them, clarifying them, showing exactly what they're supposed to be according to the standards and how they are managed as such. So there's lots of good conversations around ghost records and, should you be scared, and business key collision codes, what are they, and are they changed to the standards? And a number of those topics come up. Effectivity satellites, what are they, how do they work, those type of elements. So that was probably one of the few more technical conversations at the conference, but certainly that was the intent of the presentation, is to sort of recap some of the things that are typically misunderstood, like multi-active satellites.
Yeah, that's great. So if you're interested in the deep tech, then make sure you catch that episode that'll be coming out shortly with Nols' presentation. And Bronwen, you did a presentation as well. Can you give us a quick snapshot?
I did. Just before I do, can I just reiterate, I really enjoyed Nols' presentation. I highly recommend it. I'm a bit of a techie, so anything that's got tech in for it is good by me. A lot of people might have, the standards have changed in some regards. So Nols' presentation is a great place to go to see the most up-to-date standards on a few things. My presentation was more about customer experience and customer journey, and the value of that acceleration templates, the value of doing things in a consistent, repeatable manner, using metadata and templates, not just from a development perspective, but also from managing that technical debt, making sure that you can refer to what's being done, maintain what's being done again and again, because it is something you need to check and see how things are configured. And to customer experiences and what, if your organization looks like those customers, what you might expect to have your data vault look like.
Yeah, I know one of the most common questions we get is, can I hear from someone who's been down the journey? So that's a really valuable session as well. So I'd encourage everyone to check that out in the next few weeks as that comes available as well. And as I mentioned, we've got James's presentation is the other one that's coming soon, that deeper dive into data mesh. So that pretty much wraps us up for today. Thank you both for joining, and obviously to the community. Please, provide some feedback or ask some questions. We want to make sure that these sessions are as interesting and engaging for you as possible. And until then, we'll see you next time.